College football is back, and we're back on the Big Mountain with a very special guest.
Hey, it's great to have you back on the mountain. I am JY. This is my good friend Steve, and we've got Caleb Pletz with Beware of Bulldogs podcast. He is a Fresno State Bulldog all-knowing fan, and so we're bringing him in here to talk about this huge game. Fresno State going to the big house, Michigan. I'm going to let Caleb kind of tell us, how he feels about Fresno State. You're going to tell us about Michigan. But Caleb, hey, we want to welcome you to the Big Mountain.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. And people can find you on Beware of Bulldogs on the podcast. I know you guys have a YouTube channel. I think you guys are active on X. How can we find you?
Correct. Yeah. Most fun times we have Sunday nights live, like recap reaction shows on YouTube and X. Better to be on YouTube, better crowd over there. Yeah. So follow us there. Beware of Bulldogs. I think our X handle is beware_Bulldogs. We are on Instagram, Beware Bulldogs podcast. Not great content going on over there, to be honest. I mean, the sports world lives on X. So
yeah, for sure. It's hard to be on a whole bunch of platforms. We tried Instagram too, and it's just not where it's at. So we'll make sure we get Caleb's stuff down in the description so anybody can find his stuff. So let's get into the game. I am so excited for this game. Prime time on NBC. I mean, you can't get a bigger game than this to kick off the season. So let's start talking about the Fresno State offense. I know, Steve, you are Mikey Keene homer, but you got to kind of keep that down a little bit. You got to be the Michigan guy. You got to be the Michigan man.
Well, I got some questions about the Michigan defense versus Mikey Keene.
All right. Well, let's go to Caleb. He can tell us about Mikey Keene, how awesome he's going to be, Sherrod and the receivers. I'm big on Jalen Moss. I'm anxious to see what he can do this year, but I don't want to take this thunder. Caleb, what's going on with the offense here against Michigan?
Sure. A lot of, I would say, expectation on Mikey. Take another step forward. In the program for a second year, he's solidified himself as a leader on this team. Coaching staff has pointed out he's actually being more vocal in leading the offense now. Last year coming in as a transfer, kind of tough to assert yourself in that role without kind of gaining the respect of the teammates. So he definitely has earned that now, and coming back as year 2 starter, big expectations for him coming back and just being strong too, and also fully healthy. I mean, last year, we'll get into Fresno State offensive line in a little bit, I'm sure, but tough for Mikey just to stay upright and stay healthy. I mean, so he was banged up with an ankle, with a knee last year. So to get him start of the season fully healthy, we feel like he can be operating, fully at full capacity right now.
Yeah, that's great. Well, let's talk about the O-line because, I think a big reason Steve's high on Fresno State is Mikey Keene. Well, Mikey Keene needs to stay healthy for the entire season. And I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. We're talking the Michigan game, but talk about that O-line and how you think maybe they've improved themselves, especially against one of the top and the reigning national champion, for crying out loud. They're known for their defense. I mean, how do you think this O-line is going to hold up?
Sure. Yeah. This is probably going to be the toughest matchup of the year. That's certainly not easy or not difficult to project there. So, there are some good pieces that, we feel good about on this offensive line. If you look at the center, Mose Vavao, guy that's been in the program for a long time, mostly at guard. He slides over this year at center. He's, captain, senior leader on this team. So he's really solid up the middle at the left guard position. We feel pretty good about that one too. Osmar Velez, been very solid and rotational guy, 6th year, guy here in the program. Also feel good about right tackle Braylon Nelson. Really, probably the biggest, the most, imposing force on that offensive line. So those three we feel pretty good about. But the other two, right guard, left tackle, big question marks. So right now we got penciled in one new face on right guard, Campbell McCarg. Started at Cal Poly, bounced to Oregon State. Now he ended up here. So he was hurt most of last year. We'll see how he's able to fit in with this group. And left tackle right now, it's looking like Torrin Penwright. So he's been in the program a long time, another senior. I mean, that's the thing with this offensive line. They are pretty experienced in terms of time in the program. But if they're able to gel as a unit, that's going to be the big question. Fresno State also brings in a new offensive line coach, former player Matt Smith. A lot of high regards for him from the players, and he was a very solid center for Fresno State for a couple years. So a lot of question marks, and if they're going to be able to stop this elite Michigan defense, which it's going to be really difficult because
Yeah.
it's just kind of a different body type and skill level that we're going up against. I feel confident about this offensive line against Mountain West competition, but Big Ten is a whole different animal.
Yeah, why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, so Caleb, I've been looking at this matchup, and Michigan lost a lot from last year. They lose their top 10 draft pick quarterback. They lose their coach. They lose a lot of offensive linemen, but almost everything they lost was on that offense. Really, their defense is still intact. A ferocious front seven. The guys on the D line, like you said, they're just a different body type. You got some monsters, some freaking war daddies on that defensive line. So you talked about the Fresno offensive line, and there's some pieces there, and you're confident they can hold up against the Mountain West. I think we're both in agreement. That's going to be the tricky part of this game for Fresno State is how against Michigan is how the Bulldog offensive line holds up against that front seven for Michigan. So that being said, are you expecting any changes, game plan things? I don't know how much of a look into practices you guys get out there or anything like that. How do you think, are they going to do anything different? Is Fresno State going to do anything different out of their game plan of what they normally do or what they would do against Mountain West competition to account for that defensive line? Or do you think they're just going to line up and say, okay, let's see what we can do?
I would expect at first them to try to just approach it like any other team. Let's try to establish the run. And, Malik Sherrod coming back as starting running back for the second year is a really dynamic runner. And he has the ability to make guys miss and to really be explosive. So he has to be a big part of the offensive game plan for Fresno State. And that goes for any game this year, but especially against Michigan, they're going to need to have some sort of balance here. And so between establishing a run with Malik Sherrod, who is really dynamic, and it just has to be a quick passing game because I don't think Mikey Keene is going to have a whole lot of time to pass. So keeping it short and just not turning the ball over, no dumb throws from Mikey, and just getting it out to a guy like Jalen Moss, who you mentioned you're pretty high on. He's a really really exciting player and a guy has kind of grown into his body now, third year in the program, and really looks to take that next step as the number one wide receiver for this team.
Yeah, I'm anxious to see him play this year in this game, but in this year in total. Anything else with your Michigan defense before maybe we switch gears here?
No, go ahead and switch gears.
All right, so let's talk the defense for the Fresno State Bulldogs going up against Michigan's offense. As Steve said, that's where a lot of the turnover here has occurred with Michigan. So how do you feel in the defense here for the Bulldogs is kind of aligned? I know I'm expecting big things from this defense this year. I think there's a lot of really good defenses in the Mountain West. But I think the Bulldogs have certainly have one of them. I mean, what are your expectations here? Kind of with that front group, how they're going to handle the getting to the quarterback. And we'll get into the quarterback for Michigan here in a little bit. But how are you feeling about the defense?
So if we're looking at comparing offense and defense, I feel much more confident about the Fresno State defense than I do the Fresno State offense. So the defensive line is very deep. I mean, they're going to be rotating 8 guys the whole game, and if you're looking at the 2 deep, basically all 8 of those guys are going to get meaningful snaps. Fresno State brings in a highly regarded transfer in Corey Foreman via USC, former 5-star. Yeah, unheard of for Fresno State. So we'll see how he's able to pan out. He's had some praise from the coaching staff and also some motivation and saying, he's not quite there of, where they expect him to be. So if he is able to be a dynamic pass rusher and a disruptor, that's a huge weapon for Fresno State in trying to slow down this Michigan offense. So guys like Gabriel Lightfoot and Devo Bridges, really strong on the defensive line. So compared to Mount West, we think that this might be the better defensive line in the conference. So
Yeah.
it looks like Michigan has a lot of new pieces on the offensive line. So I think y'all can probably talk to that a little bit. But I do think that there is a possibility for a Fresno State defensive line to have a bit of an edge here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to follow up with that, from the Michigan perspective, again, looking at this matchup, as far as I can tell, we have not had an officially named starter. I've been watching Michigan closely. There's been all kinds of reports out of camp, but everything is pointing to Alex Orji being their starting quarterback, or at least getting the majority of the snaps. We'll see if they try a couple different guys. And Orji is a guy, exceptional, phenomenal athlete, big, just a tank of a guy to bring down. But Michigan last year, he got plenty of playing time, but I think he maybe threw 4 passes in competitions or had 4 pass attempts. So they really haven't trusted him to throw the ball before. And even I think in their spring game, he wasn't throwing the ball a lot. So my question to you is, and I agree with you, there's a lot of questions as far as Michigan's offense. Their receivers, I mean, they don't have anything at receiver when you look at, they're rebuilding their wide receiver. I mean, they're rebuilding their offensive line. They do bring back Braylon Edwards, who's a very, an awesome running back. But for me, that X factor could be Alex Orji. So my question for you, the Fresno State defense, obviously this is the first game of the year, but last year, how did they hold up against rushing quarterbacks and quarterbacks that were that dual threat? I can't remember, did they play UNLV with Maeva last year, or just in general, how did they hold up last year to those rushing quarterbacks?
Last season for Fresno State was really a tale of two different seasons, it felt like. I mean, first 9 games, the team was like doing really well, save for the Wyoming loss. But I mean, last 3 games of the regular season were just brutal, and just the rushing defense in general was just getting gashed. So that was mostly attributed to injuries. I mean, they were a lot thinner on the defensive line last year. That's at least what was our rationale there. So um, the running quarterback has always been a problem for Fresno State. So, given that Orji has that ability, I think that is a concern for Fresno State, and being able to contain him. And one of our keys to the game, our preview came out yesterday. So, if you guys do want to hear what we have to say about this game, feel free to check it out on YouTube and wherever you get podcasts. But Orji has to beat Fresno State by throwing the ball. If Fresno State is just allowing Michigan and Edwards to just run all over the place, it's going to be a long day for Fresno State defense. So if they're forcing Orji to pass, that is the best case scenario for Fresno State.
Great. So what about secondary? I mean, you mentioned that you want them to throw, because that means you're stopping the run, both Edwards and Orji or whomever's running the ball. So pretty confident in your secondary then, or is it more just like, hey, we don't think Orji can throw the ball. Yeah, we like our secondary, but make him do something that he doesn't maybe want to do or doesn't have the experience doing. I mean, how are you feeling about the secondary there?
Sure. I think it's a little bit of both, just lack of evidence from Orji being able to do it. I'm sure, since he is the quarterback of University of Michigan, I'm sure he knows how to throw a football.
Yeah.
We just haven't gotten to see it yet. So it's definitely a bit of show me you can do it. But we do feel pretty good about our secondary too. And we'll briefly talk about the linebackers right now. I mean, this is another really deep group. I think that there's 4 guys in there that really can be rotating on the field. So Tuasivi Nomura, USC transfer, was banged up for most of last year. He's back healthy, voted captain this year. So really looking forward to see what he can do when he's fully healthy. Another guy, Malachi Langley, 6th-year guy in the program, just stud, eats up tackles, and he's kind of our cleanup crew. And then a younger guy, Phoenix Jackson, who is just a physical specimen. So really looking forward to getting him on the field. Fresno State has had, a lot of last year. They had a couple linebackers that have just been in the program for forever, which we were grateful for because they were really solid players. And we got a couple guys on the bench that we were wanting to see and get them some playing time. So we feel pretty good about the linebacker crew there, and then being able to get some rotation. But to your question about the secondary, our cornerbacks, in particular Cam Lockridge, he's a really, really good cover corner. I would say probably top in the Mountain West. So it's going to be a test to see how he compares to the Big Ten talent. But between him and Alzelian Hamilton, those are kind of the 2 corners right now. They are competent, I would say that. And Lockridge is very good in coverage. So I think that we should be pretty good at safety. Dean Clark, transfer from Kent State last year, very solid and dependable. Doesn't really make a whole lot of mistakes. And just a guy that is, cleaning up a little bit. So, I mean, one note that people would probably enjoy. So, we spent some time talking to a couple of cornerbacks, and so they told us that they've been all up in the Michigan wide receivers Instagrams. They know their girlfriends' names. They know everything about them. So they are ready to talk some trash on Saturday and get in their heads. So they are not afraid, and they're definitely looking up for this challenge.
Love it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay, so I have a follow up here. I think JY is going to try before the end of this interview to nail you down to do a pick, okay, of the game. And I'm not asking you to do that here, but you talked about the players are ready to do some trash talk. You talked about some of the different expectations, and that you think the key for Fresno is to get Orgy to throw the ball. So that just leads me to I want your impression of just kind of the vibes around the program going into this game. Again, I'm not asking you to make a pick right now, but do you feel like the fan base, the players, are they looking at this as, hey, we want to go in? I mean, everyone wants to win the game, or are they looking at this, hey, we need to go in? Is this our opportunity to go and shock the world and put our name by beating Michigan? Or is this more of a, hey, we know we're outmanned, but we want to make a good impression to set us up for maybe later if we make a run in the Mountain West? Just kind of trying to get a vibe check around the team and what their expectations are, both of the team and the fan base heading into this game.
Sure. So I think just expectation for the program, and this goes back to the Pat Hill days of anyone, anytime, anywhere, and interim head coach Tim Skipper, who recently took over for Coach Tedford. He kind of has had all of the past coaches' influence on him. He started playing under Jim Sweeney, and then Pat Hill took over, and for last year when he was a player here, and then ended up coaching under Pat, and then coaching under Tedford, and now he's been tasked to be the interim head coach. So he definitely embodies that mentality of we're not afraid of anyone, and we're gonna go crack some people, and let's try to make it a tough game for them. So the expectation here is that we're going to keep it competitive. I think that most fans are realistic and just hoping that there's no catastrophic injuries here, and we're collecting a nice paycheck to go to Ann Arbor, and that'll definitely help the athletic budget. But I think that the team definitely believes that they have a chance. I mean, we're pretty much getting Michigan at the best possible time, I think, coming off the national championship. It's just so many question marks, new coaching staff on that side. So it's really set up about as well as possible for taking on a defending national champion.
For sure. Well, you mentioned Tim Skipper. I want to get into coaches here real quick. I think everybody at this point knows that Tedford did step down. He had been dealing with health issues here for quite a while. I mean, I would think, I haven't seen any, and maybe it's out there and I just missed it, but I haven't seen any real reporting that, Skipper was being groomed to be whether an interim or next head coach. You would think that would be the case, just given kind of Tedford's past. So I'm going to let you talk to Skipper where he's at with it. I know he seems like he's hit the ground running, high energy type of guy. And then we'll get to Michigan and what went on there with their coaching. But I want to hear about Skipper first. So where's he at right now?
Well, Skip got a trial run in the bowl game in the New Mexico Bowl, when Tedford first stepped down. So, administration kind of got a trial there. And probably the biggest compliment I can pay to Skipper is the players love him. And, we were at a fundraising dinner for the team, and, they announced the coach, to come on the stage and, give a little speech. And, all of the players stand up and are just hooting and hollering, and most of everyone's just sitting down at a respectful fundraising dinner. So the team is bought in for Skipper, which I think is a really important piece of being a head coach, is getting buy-in from your army. So team is bought in. He's a really energetic guy. You feel a little bit more youth from him. I think he's in his 50s though, but younger than Tedford. And not to say Tedford wasn't energetic, but it's kind of a different style. I mean, he was more CEO type. He's running a really tight program, knows all the details, and was really good at executing that. So that'll be a big change for this team. I mean, Skipper is very energetic, passionate on the sideline, which is great. But how is he going to be able at managing the game? Decisions. Is he going to be good at clock management and for managing personnel and managing the coaching staff? All big question marks that we still have to see. But overall, the team and the community is bought in for Skipper. So I think he has a very legitimate chance at being the long-term hire. Assuming the bottom doesn't fall out this year, which I think we both don't think that's going to happen. But
Right.
so yeah, all in all, Skipper definitely has the buy-in from the community and the team.
Great. Well, another head coach that got some of that experience last year too is Michigan's. I mean, Steve, how are you feeling about Sharon Moore here and the transition? Harbaugh's gone, although they can't seem to get away from the freaking scandals anymore. But still, I don't want to upset our Michigan fans too much. But I'll tell you what, it always keeps coming up. But how are we feeling about Moore and just that transition?
Well, here's the thing. So Caleb talked about Fresno State last year being like a tale of two seasons. I think Michigan this year is really a tale of two teams. When they talk to some of the players say, "Oh, nothing is different. We're the same team as we were last year. Nothing is different. We're doing things the same way." I mean, Sharon Moore was there, like you said, he got that extended tryout and won some games. However, with everything they lost this last year, losing their head coach, losing multiple players or multiple staff members, losing so much on the offensive side of the ball, and then combine that with all of the off-field turmoil. There's always a bit of a hangover, post national championship hangover. They had a long physical season last year. And all of that emotion of winning the national championship, going through the scandal, the turmoil, the all the off the field stuff, the new as we film, I think the new Netflix documentary may have dropped last night or today. And just all the things going around the program. I agree with Caleb that Fresno is getting Michigan at the right time. If you remember last year, Michigan, when Harbaugh was suspended, they started slow. Yes, they won the games. They won every game last year. So kudos to them. They won every game last year, but they started slow beginning of the season with Harbaugh out. And just again, the combination of losing so many players, and the off the field drama, the circus that's going on, I think that puts the program in a bit of a turmoil. And honestly, when you compare these rosters, Michigan has more talent, more depth than Fresno State. No one is going to argue with that. However, if you're going to come and you're going to catch somebody at a good time, this to me is the perfect time. And I think it was, I'm thinking of almost 20 years ago where App State came in and upset Michigan in the Big House in the very first game that was on BTN. I watched live. That's how old I am. Caleb's probably in kindergarten, maybe. I don't know. But I'm not saying it's definitely an upset opportunity. I'm not predicting that upset, but it's just to me, the stars align. The Michigan, more talented team, more depth and all that, but the timing is on Fresno's side. So I'm really curious. I think the line is 21.5. We haven't made our official picks yet as far as when we're filming here, but I love Fresno to keep this with under 20 points. I think for a lot of the game, they could keep it maybe a touchdown, 10 points. Maybe it gets away a little bit at the end, but I love, Fresno keeping this under 20 points.
Well, let's end this with Caleb then. I mean, you gave your pick, and Caleb did talk. I was going to ask him if there's any intangibles that we haven't already talked about. You both mentioned, one intangible maybe is the timing of this game being the first game for Michigan coming off of that. And, we talked about all of that. Maybe that's the biggest intangible. So I'll throw it to Caleb. Any other intangibles that we haven't talked about that maybe you want to bring up? And then, of course, we got to ask you for your pick.
Sure. So I do think that this could be a possible look ahead game for Michigan with Texas coming to town the following week. So I'm sure that they probably aren't going to be showing their full capabilities on offense and probably going to keep it pretty plain. So maybe an opportunity for Fresno State to take advantage of that and maybe force their hand to try to open the playbook a little bit. In terms of intangibles for Fresno State, something interesting that was noted in the coach's press conference this week was offensive coordinator Pat McCann. He's going to be calling plays from the sideline this year. So, previously he'd been up in the booth where typically the plays are called from, but he said he just has not liked it up there and wants to have a better connection to the players on the field. So, interesting to see how that goes. And McCann in his second year calling plays here for the Bulldogs. So kind of intangibles there to see how that adjustment goes. And especially with the new helmet comms. I mean, in a stadium that is probably going to be very loud, it's going to be an interesting introduction to that for Mikey Keene and the offense, especially for getting the plays in, and do they have signs as a backup? Thankfully Stallions isn't there anymore, so I think we're okay there. So yeah, just to see how that offense is able to handle that, and just going into a historic stadium. I mean, this isn't the kind of place where Fresno State gets to play every year. So there should be a pretty good contingent from Fresno. I mean, I would expect, I don't know, maybe 5,000 ish to go. We usually travel pretty well, and it's holiday weekend too. So I think that extra opportunity for fans there. So you want my pick, and so I'll preface this by saying Beware Bulldogs is a fan show, and so we are homers, true and true. And so I would not be true to my Bulldog roots if I did not pick the Bulldogs to pull an upset here. So I wrote the score down as 23-22 Fresno State. It's going to be a weird field goal game, and I think that Fresno State has a veteran kicker in Dylan Lynch, and we can count on him to make some kicks. And I think that the defense should be able to keep things under control. I mean, obviously, I'm worried about Donovan Edwards, but I think that Fresno State has a chance to do this. So I'm going to take the homer pick. Dogs are winning straight up.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's a homer pick or not. I love the pick.
Yeah, so I want to add a little bit of just kind of context from the Michigan side.
Yeah.
Or in looking at both sides, I love your points there at the end, and I think you and I talked about this. We were texting over the weekend during week 0, and I tell you 3 or 4 times, the new helmet rule is huge this year, especially at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
So if you look at these two teams, obviously one team is more talented than the other. However, week 1, okay, you have an experienced quarterback in Mikey Keene. He's now going to have the helmet. He's going to be able to get communication directly from his coaches.
Right.
And then you have most likely an inexperienced quarterback on the other side, maybe a first-time starter, a lot of pressure on him. I agree that I think that's a big factor is the helmet radios. And I think that Mikey Keene, I already thought that would be a huge matchup. The Mikey Keene matchup, experienced guy versus probably a first-time starter. But then you throw in that helmet radio. I think that could be a wild card. I mean, you look at that Florida State Georgia Tech game, you look at some other games, Nevada's offense this week, they looked phenomenal.
Yep.
I don't know if we have enough information yet to evaluate how big of a difference that could be. So I'm really intrigued about that. And again, about Mikey Keene and the Fresno State offense against the Michigan defense. To me, that's the key to the game.
Awesome. Well, Caleb, we thank you so much for coming on the Big Mountain, previewing this game. And maybe we can have you back on again.
Would love to. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, so remember, Beware of Bulldogs podcast,
Yes.
Information down below. Hey, make sure you give this one a like, subscribe if you like our channel. We'll see you guys next time on the Big Mountain.
Thanks, Caleb.